Have you ever looked at an old cookbook and thought, what in the world were they eating back then? Well, buckle up, because today, we're opening the dusty drawers of vintage Americana, digging up 30 of the strangest, most forgotten recipes to ever grace a 1950s dinner table. Some of these dishes were born out of wartime rationing, others from the atomic age obsession with canned food, gelatin molds, and miracle convenience meals. And yet, somehow, they weren't just eaten, they were loved. From cheese-stuffed hot dogs to peanut butter and bacon canapes, these meals tell a much bigger story than just what was on the plate. They reveal how America once cooked under pressure, stretched ingredients in hard times, and let creativity run wild in the kitchen. These aren't just recipes, they're edible history. The kind your grandma might whisper about, or your great-uncle might remember seeing at a 4th of July picnic back in 1958. You'll discover savory pies that didn't need crusts, casseroles layered like a 7-layer dream, and desserts that dared to mix soda, Jell-O, and meat all in one bite. And just wait till you hear about the mock apple pie made entirely from Ritz crackers, without a single apple in sight. Some of these will make your mouth water. Others might make you squint and go, people really ate that? But all of them are fascinating, weird, and a little bit wonderful. So stick around till the very end, because I promise, you've never seen a food list quite like this before. This is food history like you've never tasted it, so don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and let's dig in. 01. Porcupine Meatballs, the Depression-era dinner that stuck around. They sound dangerous, but porcupine meatballs were anything but. These spiky-sounding little wonders were a staple in Depression-era homes, born out of thrift, but remembered for their flavor. At first glance, they looked like regular meatballs. But a closer peek revealed something strange sticking out: grains of uncooked white rice, poking out like quills after being simmered to tender perfection. The idea was brilliant. Stretch a pound of ground beef, often mixed with oats, bread crumbs, or onion, by folding in raw rice. As the meatballs cooked in tomato sauce, the rice would expand, giving them their signature porcupine look and doubling the bulk of each ball without needing more meat. In the 1930s, that meant feeding a whole family on scraps. But here's the twist: despite their humble origins, porcupine meatballs survived beyond the Depression. You'd find them in 1950s cookbooks, scribbled on index cards in church basements, and even featured in Betty Crocker pamphlets. They became the kind of dish moms passed down not because they were fancy, but because they worked. They were filling. They were simple. And with the right sauce, whether a sweet ketchup glaze, canned tomato soup, or homemade marinara, they were delicious. These meatballs weren't made for show. They were made for survival, comfort, and affection. You'd spot them bubbling in a Pyrex casserole dish, sitting on a Formica counter, while a child set the table and a husband walked in from a long factory shift. And today? They're making a comeback, not just among nostalgia cooks, but among those who appreciate real food with real history. They're quirky. They're cozy. They're pure Americana. So the next time someone asks what a porcupine meatball is, don't just say rice and meat. Tell them it's a Depression-era love letter to survival, in a tomato-soaked bite. 02. Impossible taco pie when Bisquick met the border. Back in the 1970s, General Mills wasn't just selling baking mix, they were selling kitchen magic. And nothing screamed modern miracle more than their line of impossible pies. No rolling pins, no crusts, no mess. Just pour, bake, and somehow, the pie made itself. Among them, one dish stood out for daring to mix suburban America with a south-of-the-border twist: the impossible taco pie. Now don't let the name fool you, this wasn't some fancy layered Tex-Mex casserole. It was humble, hearty, and undeniably quirky. It started with brown ground beef, seasoned with taco spices, then layered with shredded cheddar, chopped onions, and maybe a few black olives if you were feeling fancy. But the magic? That came next. You'd mix Bisquick, eggs, and milk in a bowl and pour it right on top. Into the oven it went, and by the time it came out, a crust had magically formed. The cheesy beef sank slightly, the batter puffed up and browned, and you were left with a golden wedge that sliced like pie but tasted like Taco Tuesday met a Midwestern potluck. For busy moms in avocado-colored kitchens, this was revolutionary. It wasn't just dinner, it was science you could eat. Quick, cheap, and shockingly satisfying. Impossible Taco Pie became a weeknight hero in the late 70s and early 80s, passed along through Betty Crocker booklets and local church cookbooks. It wasn't authentic Mexican food, but it was authentic American adaptation, a mashup of convenience, comfort, and clever marketing. And today, when you revisit that first warm bite, cheesy, eggy, beefy, you're not just tasting food, you're tasting a moment in American culinary history where shortcuts felt like sorcery. It wasn't impossible. It was brilliant. 03. 7-layer casserole, the stacked supper of suburban dreams. Before Instagram food trends and layered parfaits, America had its own version of stacked beauty, straight from a glass baking dish. Enter the 7-layer casserole, a recipe that swept through 1950s kitchens like a suburban storm, winning over housewives one Pyrex at a time. This wasn't just a dish, it was a system. Each layer had a purpose, and each bite was a map of mid-century pantry life. You started at the bottom, raw rice, yes, raw, spread evenly in the dish. Then came a layer of canned corn, sweet and starchy. On top of that, uncooked ground beef, seasoned lightly with salt and pepper. Then onion slices, sharp and aromatic. Next came a layer of canned tomato sauce, poured over gently like red lacquer. And finally, the topper, crisp bacon strips, laid like a flag over a casserole of intention. That's only 6, you ask? The 7th? That was often water or broth, poured over everything to ensure the rice cooked and the flavors mingled. It went into the oven raw and came out bubbling, layered, and oddly beautiful. The rice soaked up the juices. The beef cooked into the tomatoes. The bacon crisped to perfection. Every forkful was a combination of textures: soft, meaty, smoky, and sweet. 7-layer casserole wasn't gourmet. But it was clever. It required no fancy tools, no pre-cooking, and just enough layering to feel special. It showed up in church potlucks, PTA dinners, and Wednesday night suppers across the country. It was efficient. It was affordable. And it looked impressive, especially in clear-sided dishes where each stripe peeked through. Today, we scroll for layered lasagnas or TikTok hacks. But back then, this was the original stacked sensation. A casserole that whispered, "Yes, I used what I had, but I made it lovely." And honestly, it still is. 04. Chili cheese macaroni bake, the casserole that turned up the heat. If there was ever a dish that screamed comfort with a kick, it was the chili cheese macaroni bake, a bubbling, cheesy, chili-laced casserole that brought warmth to Cold War-era kitchens. This wasn't fine dining. It was family fuel. And for 1960s America, where convenience met creativity, this casserole was a weeknight legend. At its heart, the dish was simple: elbow macaroni, cooked until just tender, then folded into a thick, meaty chili usually made from ground beef, canned tomatoes, kidney beans, and chili powder. But it didn't stop there. This was a casserole, after all, and casseroles didn't skimp. Next came the mountain of shredded cheddar, often the sharp orange kind, stirred right into the chili mac mix until it melted into a creamy, spicy tangle. Some cooks added a splash of evaporated milk or a spoon of sour cream for richness. Others layered sliced green peppers or a sprinkle of paprika for color. Then the whole thing was poured into a casserole dish, topped with even more cheese, because why not, and baked until golden, bubbly, and irresistible. It was hearty. It was messy. And it was a hit, especially with kids and dads who'd just come in from work or school. But this wasn't just comfort food, it was a culinary reflection of the era. In the 60s and 70s, chili powder was becoming more common in American kitchens, thanks to the rising popularity of Tex-Mex flavors. The chili cheese macaroni bake became a bridge, part pasta, part chili, part cheesy dream. A little bit Italian, a little bit Southwestern, but all American in spirit. You didn't need a lot of money to make it. Just pantry staples, a casserole dish, and an oven. And when it came out bubbling and bold, it tasted like a small celebration, baked right into your Wednesday night. 05. Turkey Divan, the leftover legend of hotel glamour. Long before it became a midweek leftover hack, Turkey Divan was the definition of elegance. It didn't come from a farmhouse or a church cookbook, it came from the grand halls of New York's Chatham Hotel, where it was first served in the 1930s as a high society luncheon dish. But by the 1950s, it had made its way into middle-class kitchens across America, reimagined, simplified, and served up in casserole form. The original version used sliced chicken, fresh broccoli, and a creamy Mornay sauce, a fancy cheese sauce for the elite. But the home cook's version? That was pure genius with what was on hand. Leftover turkey from Sunday dinner or Thanksgiving? Check. Frozen or canned broccoli spears? Check. Cream of mushroom soup mixed with shredded cheddar? Double check. You'd layer the broccoli in a buttered baking dish, arrange the cooked turkey over the top, and then drown it all in that velvety soup and cheese mixture. A dash of lemon juice for tang. A sprinkle of breadcrumbs, sometimes crushed cornflakes, for that golden, crunchy topping. Then it baked until the top was crisp and the sauce bubbled like lava beneath the surface. What made Turkey Divan so special wasn't just the taste, though it was rich, savory, and heart-melting. It was the idea behind it, taking scraps and transforming them into something that felt fancy. In a post-war America obsessed with economy and elegance, this dish hit the sweet spot. It made leftovers feel like luxury. Mothers across the country proudly served it in Corningware, often with a side of canned peaches or a gelatin salad. And every time, it whispered, you can still eat like royalty, even on a budget. Today, Turkey Divan is more than a casserole. It's a reminder that even the most humble ingredients, with a little creativity, can rise to hotel heights. 06. Dilly Bread, the loaf that made dill a star. In the 1960s, America was in love with shortcuts. Canned soup, boxed cake mix, frozen peas, anything that made life easier was embraced. And then came a strange little loaf that took Tupperware parties in Midwestern kitchens by storm, Dilly Bread. What made it special? For once, it wasn't sweet. It wasn't plain. And it wasn't your grandma's wheat loaf. Dilly Bread was herbaceous, fluffy, and strangely addictive, infused with the unmistakable zing of dill weed, the sharp bite of onion flakes, and a tender texture that could only come from a secret weapon, cottage cheese. Yes, cottage cheese. It sounds odd today, but in post-war kitchens, cottage cheese was a miracle food, high in protein, cheap, and always in the fridge. Someone, somewhere, folded it into a yeast bread recipe, threw in dill, and created a loaf that was as bold as it was comforting. And the country couldn't get enough. You'd find Dilly Bread recipes clipped from newspapers, scribbled in ballpoint pen on 3x5 index cards, and passed from neighbor to neighbor like gossip. The dough was simple: flour, baking soda, eggs, cottage cheese, dill, and onion, all mixed in one bowl. No kneading. No waiting. Just stir, pour, bake, and watch your kitchen fill with the tangy, savory aroma of herbs and warmth. Dilly Bread was often served warm with butter, alongside soup, or as a dinner party novelty. Some hosts even hollowed it out and filled it with spinach dip, turning the humble loaf into a 1970s party centerpiece. It wasn't just bread. It was a conversation starter. Today, when you bake Dilly Bread, you're not just making something tasty. You're reviving a flavor moment when America said, "Let's try something different," and let's make it from scratch-ish. So go ahead, slice it, butter it, savor it. Because Dilly Bread proves that even the oddest combinations can create the most unforgettable bites. 07. Fiesta corn casserole. When canned corn went to the party. If you ever opened a 1970s church cookbook, chances are you stumbled on this bright, bubbling beauty, the Fiesta corn casserole. It was loud, colorful, and unapologetically cheesy, just like the era that gave birth to it. But don't let the word fiesta fool you, this dish wasn't from Mexico. It was born right here in the heart of Middle America, where housewives with electric can openers and avocado-colored stoves were looking to spice things up, just a little. At its core was a humble ingredient, canned corn, either sweet kernel or cream style, or both if the cook was feeling adventurous. To that, they added green bell peppers, pimentos, and sometimes even a scoop of green chilies for flair. The result? A casserole that was bright, buttery, and just spicy enough to feel like something exotic for the dinner table. But the real star of the show? Cheese. And lots of it. Usually shredded cheddar, sometimes Velveeta, melted right into the mix until everything turned into a gooey, golden dream. Some recipes stirred in sour cream or mayonnaise to give it body. Others used crushed saltines or Ritz crackers on top for that crispy, toasted finish. This casserole didn't pretend to be authentic. It wasn't from a Mexican grandmother, it was from a Betty Crocker kitchen, filtered through suburban imagination. But it brought joy. And it brought color, a rarity in an era of beige casseroles and brown stews. Fiesta corn casserole often appeared on the Thanksgiving table next to turkey and green bean bake, or at potlucks where it disappeared before the second scoop. It was creamy, crunchy, warm, and just festive enough to live up to its name. Today, it stands as a tribute to a generation that wanted food to feel fun, even when it came from a can. And honestly, one bite of that cheesy corn comfort, and it still does. 08. Mock apple pie, the Ritz cracker miracle. Imagine biting into a warm, cinnamon-laced slice of apple pie only to find out there were no apples in it. Sounds impossible, right? But during the Great Depression and again in wartime America, a curious creation appeared on countless kitchen tables: mock apple pie made with Ritz crackers. Yes! Crackers. The story begins in the 1930s, when fresh fruit was expensive and seasonal, and many families had to make do with what was in the pantry. That's when Nabisco, clever as ever, printed a recipe on the back of their Ritz cracker boxes that claimed you could make a pie without a single apple. The secret? Crushed Ritz crackers layered into a prepared pie crust. Then came a syrup made of sugar, water, cream of tartar, and just the right balance of cinnamon and lemon juice. Pour it over the crackers, top it with a second crust, and bake. As it cooked, the crackers softened and soaked up the spiced syrup, transforming into something shockingly close to stewed apples. People couldn't believe it. It didn't just taste similar, it mimicked the texture and flavor so well that even seasoned bakers were fooled in blind taste tests. During World War II, when rationing hit hard, this pie became a household hero. It gave families the illusion of normalcy, even when ingredients were scarce. Mock apple pie wasn't just clever, it was resourceful Americana. It symbolized a generation that turned scarcity into creativity and proved that comfort didn't have to come from perfection, just invention. Even today, if you serve one without telling guests the secret, they'll swear you used Granny Smith's. Because mock apple pie isn't a gimmick. It's a reminder that even in the hardest of times, sweetness can still find its way to the table. So there you have it, from porcupine meatballs to the impossible sorcery of a mock apple pie. We've only just begun peeling back the layers of America's forgotten kitchen magic. These weren't just quirky recipes, they were reflections of their time. Dishes that got families through war, depression, and changing decades, with flavor, frugality, and a whole lot of heart. And the best part? We're just getting started. Because what's coming next? Well, let's just say it involves frosted sandwich loaves, cheese-stuffed wieners, and jellied salads that wiggle with mystery. You won't want to miss it. If you've enjoyed this nostalgic food journey so far, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, so you're the first to see the next batch of forgotten dishes that defined an era. And tell me in the comments, which of these 8 dishes surprised you the most? Or better yet, which one would you actually try?